We also, before that, went through a very detailed process we called a vision process to imagine the profession in a much broader sense. I think that's a really hard question. I think ultimately the market sort of makes that determination, not me, not you. But I do think the attributes of being a great CPA is someone who takes our professional responsibility very seriously.
Because I feel like, based on my observation, you just move up so fast, being the top level at your firm at 25 years old. I feel like the firm is not big enough for you to adapt with the talent. So it makes sense that you move to state, and then from state is not enough, and so you move to AICPA. Now it seems like it fits your talent, that you have enough space to swim, to grow, to make so many impact. So within all those impact you have made for AICPA, could you share with us some of the major impacts that you are very proud of?
Well, actually, part of it also is international. So I moved from having just the national view to a very incredible, a successful global view, because now our organization is truly global, and we see we're the largest professional body in the world as it relates to the profession of accountancy. There's been many, many things. Look, early in my career at the AICPA, we had Enron, WorldCom, and major legislation that was a very significant challenge. But we also, before that, went through a very detailed process we called a vision process to imagine the profession in a much broader sense.
So competency and trust seems to be like two key elements being a CPA. I know that you have been communicating with a lot of CPAs in different states, in different countries. I'm just curious, besides these two elements that define great CPAs, how can you identify a great CPA comparing with a good CPA?
Well, I think that's a really hard question. I think ultimately the market sort of makes that determination, not me, not you. But I do think the attributes of being a great CPA is someone who takes our professional responsibility very seriously. The notion of being a professional, the notion of cultivating and delivering on that trust, and absolutely committing to constantly being competent. I think a professional should have that expectation of change. The importance of our profession was probably undervalued 30 and 40 years ago, and today is much more aligned with the challenges of the world and what our skill set, our trust, our ethics, our competencies can bring to the world. And we make the world better because of that. And that, I think, is something that ought to be attractive to young people, ought to be attractive to people already in our profession as far as their career evolution is concerned. But frankly, it's a very incredibly important profession to where the world is going to continue to evolve. That trust that people put in our profession is hugely valuable, and it's something that we must maintain and build upon.
We're all talking about technologies, how technology is going to shape this accounting profession. I think someone told me that being a CPA today is the same as being a doctor, but you do not have to spend that many years in college, 5, 10 years in college to get the doctor degree. But you spend the same amount of years in college, 4 or 5 years in college, and then get the CPA license. Do you agree with that statement?
I think the analogy is better said that we would hope that any doctor we would go to would remain very current with the latest information about diseases and diagnostic capabilities, surgery capabilities. And I think anyone in our profession has to be committed to that sort of remaining current type of environment as well, because the world and technology and business changes, regulation changes dramatically as well.
We go through a lot of hot topics in our professions, and I'm just curious if you notice any specific habits that you could recommend young professions to start growing or focusing on those habits to be successful in this profession.
Well, I think the first thing I would say is the technical knowledge will only get you so far. So what we'd say is table stakes, like in someone gambling or whatever. That's what gets you to the table, right? Is table stakes. And technical knowledge is sort of that. You're not going to be considered a CPA. You're not going to be called upon without the technical knowledge, whether that's accounting and auditing or tax or technology or whatever the case may be. But the real value add is the ability of seeing big picture items, seeing business from a larger perspective, having good communication skills. I mean, if you're the smartest person in the world about what's happening, but you can't communicate it to an employer or a client or a third party, you're not going to be very effective. So communications becomes a part of that. Logical thinking, obviously ethics is in that process. But, I like to think of it as, the traditional accountancy structure is a pyramid where you have entry level people at the bottom. They're doing a lot of entry level work, and then the best advance, et cetera. And then the partners or the owners or whatever at the top of that pyramid. That's not the shape of the future, in my opinion. The shape of the future is a fat middle organization where we're going to have less entry level work because of technology.
Before we actually finish this podcast, I was wondering if you have any last tips and advice for our professions.
Well, first off, I think it's very important if you're in our profession to understand how important our profession is. That you have to have pride in that, right? Because the world is very, very complicated. And we have to continually enhance our competencies. We have to continue to much broader than we have been. The profession today is much broader than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. And it has to continue along that sort of trend line. So that I think is very important. I think the second thing is you have to be committed in this profession to constantly change your personal skills, because otherwise you're not going to be as relevant to your employer or to your client or to whoever you're working with. I think that's important. And then I think have pride in our profession. I think understand how important we are. We're way more important than just the work we're doing for our clients or our employers, because the employers we work for, the clients we work for, touch tens of thousands and millions of lives all over the world. And being that sort of professional, and the word profession is the key here, being that professional is ethical and competent to help make the world a better place, to help make business a better place. There's so many unknowns, so much challenge that's going on.